In Japan, the possession and use of swords is strictly regulated by law, and any sword sold in a place like this has to be publicly registered. However, whereas guns are registered with the police, swords are registered with the cultural agency and are regarded as art objects rather than weapons. And since they are art objects, I'm going to get a lesson now in how to appreciate them. I understand that, first of all, you have to look at the whole sword.
Yes, you hold the sword straight up like this and you examine its curvature and its overall appearance. And you think to yourself, it has a magnificent curve. It's so graceful. Maybe it's from the Kamakura period. You get the general idea of the sword.
Okay, after you've taken a look at the whole sword, then you start to look at some of the details.
Now you look closely at the surface steel. By doing this, you can tell how meticulously and delicately the sword has been forged.
Then you have these patterns here along the edge of the blade.
These patterns are very complex in that they differ from one part to another. There are patterns resembling mountains. Some are more like waves. And there are tiny ones too. What's interesting is how they're all combined exquisitely.
It really is a very Japanese sensibility. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this. Well, we've seen the artistic value of the sword. Now let's take a look at how they're actually made.
The metal for a Japanese sword is made using a traditional hands-on method called tatara. Iron sand is heated for 3 days and 3 nights, with the temperature continually adjusted. The product of this heating is called tamahagane. It is put in a furnace and heated at approximately 1,500 degrees Celsius. The tamahagane is hammered out, and then, gauging the temperature from the metal's color, the swordsmith modifies the strength of his pounding. Once it's flattened to a thickness of about 5 millimeters, it's placed in water to cool it. Then it's broken into smaller blocks. The parts that break easily are hard and used for the surface where sharpness is required. The parts that are difficult to break have more resilience and are used for the inner core to give the sword flexibility. A swordsmith can differentiate between the two by sound and feel. The small blocks of tamahagane are stacked so that heat will penetrate thoroughly and evenly. Then the metal is covered with straw ash and muddy water. This cuts off air and allows heat to slowly penetrate to the core. The steel is melting. The swordsmith estimates the temperature based on the color and sound of the fire. The next stage is forging, where the steel is strengthened by hammering. Impurities are removed in the form of sparks, and the quality of the steel is enhanced. Cuts are made, and the steel is doubled over. After about 15 cycles of folding, forging, heating, and forging, the blade has roughly 30,000 layers. This is what gives Japanese swords their strength and resilience. Next, the steel is lengthened with one small hammer. This determines the shape and is a process where the skill of a swordsmith is critical. Once the shape is formed, a mixture of clay, charcoal, and other materials is spread on the blade. The thickness of this layer is built up in some places. The mixture and its thickness subtly affect the transfer of heat to the steel in the final treatment. and determine the characteristic temper pattern. As the pattern is considered the soul of the Japanese sword, each swordsmith carefully guards details of the mixture and its thickness as a trade secret. The climax of sword making is the final heat treatment. The sword is heated to 800 degrees Celsius and then plunged into water to cool. This is the most intense moment for the swordsmith. The sudden temperature change naturally accentuates the sword's beautiful curvature. It is at this instant that a sword is supposedly imbued with a soul. The sword is handed on to such artisans as polishers and scabbard makers for completion. A beautifully rounded temper pattern has surfaced clearly. Relying on technique, instinct, and years of experience, swordsmiths continue to make blades of the highest quality.
Let's take a look at some of the artistic details of the different parts of the sword. First of all, take a look at the blade here. This one, you'll see, has a dragon pattern engraved into the blade itself. Then you have the sheath here, which has a kind of makie design all over with the emblem of the family along the sheath there. And we've got 3 more sword guards here, and if you look at these in detail, it's almost incredible the amount of detail in here. So, I understand you have quite a lot of visitors from abroad come here to buy swords as well. Any particular countries which people are particularly interested in Japanese swords?
Well, I think people from America and also people from Europe. Some of them have studied Japanese history and the history of swords, and they even know the names for all the specific parts of the sword. And they see beauty in little things that even most Japanese people can't recognize. So they know what they're talking about, what they want to buy, and they do pick out fine items. It's impressive, really.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.